Hi, everyone. Welcome to another KE webinar, KE Report webinar. This webinar, we are featuring Prosper Gold. The webinar is also being co-hosted by Focus Communications. Prosper Gold is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol PGX and on the OTCQX under the symbol PGXFF. My name is Cory Fleck. I'm your host for this webinar. We will be taking questions throughout this webinar, so please feel free to use the chat function and the question and answer function within this webinar platform to send me your questions directly. I'm going to do my best to work those in as we are moving through this presentation from Prosper Gold. I am joined by the Vice President of Exploration, Rory Ritchie. Now, Rory, I know a lot of this presentation is going to be focused on this phase 2 drill program at the company's Golden Sidewalk project that is right in the Red Lake district of Ontario. So everybody, as I mentioned, send in your questions. We already have a number of questions that have already been sent in. We will address those as Rory moves through this presentation. But Rory, overall, just give everybody a quick little info or insight into how Prosper Gold came to be created, please.
Yeah, sure, you bet, Cory. Yeah, thanks for having me. Rory Ritchie here, Vice President of Exploration for Prosper Gold in Vancouver. So Prosper Gold was RTO'd in 2013. Peter Bernier and Dirk Templeman-Cluett, it was kind of their second iteration there after their big success with Richfield Ventures, which they sold in 2011. I'll get into the details there. And I knew the guys there, particularly Dirk, Pete, and James. And just about 16 months ago, I presented a project to them just as a favor for a geologist. I know they're at Sabina Gold and Silver. They really liked it. Anyways, and through a number of different circumstances, I came on board to kind of run the project and the whole story there. And here we are. We've drilled, done our phase 1 drilling. We're onto something. And what I want to kind of illustrate to viewers today is that phase 2 should be exciting. That's when we can really get down to business and get that discovery hole that really we're looking for. And we're pretty optimistic that we can find that. So as you mentioned, we're listed on the 3 exchanges there. I'll go through the kind of corporate, kind of regular corporate stuff, and then towards the end, obviously recap phase 1 and then get into the details of phase 2. And there's a few new things here that nobody's seen. So hopefully people find it interesting. So the team is led by Pete Bernier. As mentioned, Pete founded Richfield Ventures in 2007. 2009, he acquired the Blackwater-Davidson in central British Columbia, and 23 months later sold it for $500 million to New Gold. That was a big discovery in central BC, low-grade bulk tonnage deposit, almost 12 million ounces now being put into production by Artemis Gold. James Hedallen is our COO, so he handles all the corporate finance, corporate compliance stuff, does a great job. Myself, as mentioned, Vice President of Exploration. I worked and lived in Red Lake 13 years ago, and that's how I was familiar with this project and generally just familiar with the geology in those neck of the woods there. So it's a great place to be. Jim Miller-Tate, Jason Hines, and Wes Carson round out the board. Jim is VP Exploration at Imperial Metals. Jason Hines, he's at Royal Gold there, Vice President, Business Development and Strategy. And Jason was actually involved in the transaction there in 2011 with New Gold, working for a national bank on the M&A side. Wes Carson, Vice President, Mining Operations at Wheaton Precious Metals. So he handles their operating royalty portfolio. And then Dirk Templeman-Cluett, again, as mentioned, was with Pete there at Richfield, the geologist behind the Blackwater-Davidson discoveries. So he's kind of taken a step back, but he's a hands-on technical advisor, and he's been very helpful this whole time. And Doug Cater's another technical advisor. Doug was most notably with Kirkland Lake Gold, 2016 to 2019. Those are 3 pivotal years for KL Gold when they went from $6 to over $60. Lastly, Tom Obradovich, he's an advisor, a bit on the technical side, but mostly on the capital markets side. And he's made some big discoveries, Fruta del Norte down in Ecuador, which is sold for over $1 billion to Kinross, and also the Young Davidson there, just southwest of Timmins. So a big team really put together to make a discovery and sell an asset. So cap structure as it stands, just over 23 million shares. So it is a tight share structure. Prosper kind of rolled back and recapitalized about, I think, 18 months ago. So the intent there was to do what Richfield did, to maximize that leverage on our discovery. So keep the share structure tight. That's important for us. 3.8 million in the treasury as of October 30th. So that's after phase 1 drilling. 12.1% management ownership, largely led by Pete Bernier. He's at about 10% there, likes to maintain that kind of position. He's put in over $2 million, so he's a big believer. 19% institutional ownership, split more or less evenly between Plethora Precious Metals Fund, Crescat Capital, and Sprott Global out of Carlsbad. So tight share structure, a pretty decent valuation as far as an entry point, 15 million, and then 3.8 million in the bank. So we have enough money to kind of keep going.
When it comes to that institutional ownership, you mentioned the share rollback and the cleanup of the company. Did these institutions come in post all of that action?
Crescat and Sprott did. Plethora has been maintaining that 9.9% partially diluted interest in Prosper since 2016. So Plethora hung in there through the consolidation, and like I said, they maintained that 9.9% stake.
Okay, thank you.
Partially diluted. So we're in the Red Lake district. As mentioned, I worked and lived in Red Lake. I was there from 2009 to 2011. It was a really busy time. Goldcorp was making a lot of money, and just a lot of juniors in the space, and it kind of quieted down, from about 2014 to 2017, and then Great Bear kind of really brought some fresh life to the area, which is great. So we're about 60 kilometers east of Red Lake, the municipality of Red Lake. As mentioned, Great Bear's Resources Dixie project, that's 65 kilometers, 2 hours southwest. And then you also have Pure Gold Mining reopening the Madsen mine there in Red Lake, which is great to see. And Springpole, about 40 kilometers to our northeast, they got a just under 5 million ounce gold resource, and they're working towards development. So it's a big area, or just a happening area, a great place to work. And obviously a lot of eyes on these days, and there are a number of majors kicking around as well. So the project itself, over 160 square kilometers. What you see in red is subject to an option agreement between Prosper Gold and Sabina Gold and Silver. We have fulfilled our exploration expenditure requirements, so we will be, we intend to earn in 100% in the very near future. And then the rest, what you see in yellow, is a combination of third-party acquisitions and some staking before the belt was really fully locked up, in mid 2020. So it's a good land position. It encompasses most of the prospective geology, or at least in my mind, the most prospective geology on this side of the belt that is similar to the Red Lake side. And as mentioned, you can't get a toe in the door in this belt anymore. So we're fortunate in that regard.
So Rory, real quick,
Yep.
You mentioned that you brought this project to the team. What did you like so much about this project early on, outside of just the jurisdiction?
Yeah, good question and good timing. So what I liked first and foremost, so I knew about the Golden Sidewalk project. This was Sabina Gold and Silver's, really their flagship before they made that big discovery up in Nunavut, the Back River deposit, which is, I don't know exactly, but it's around 9 million ounces. That's some pretty good grade. So it's a fantastic deposit. And so Sabina had some of these claims since 1987. They did a fair amount of work here. And I knew about the project because it's the one place on the Birchuchi Greenstone side that has Balmer volcanics, and those Balmer volcanics are Mesoarchean rocks. They host the Red Lake Gold Mine and a number of other, Koshner Mine. They host a number of deposits on the Red Lake side, and then immediately, that big contact known as an unconformity on the just above the Balmer volcanics is present on the Red Lake side. It's key, and it's present on this side. So similar geology, and like I said, the one place where you see this Balmer volcanics and you see an unconformity right next to it. So it's prospective just based on the age of the rocks. And then, of course, there's a lot of high grade where, at surface where you don't see that everywhere in the Birchuchi side. But you do see it on this project. Visible gold surface, in the northwest corner of the project, mostly around the Bathurst mine. That was a small past producer in the 20s that was discovered on the back of the first discoveries on the Red Lake side there. So in this portion of the project, you see visible gold at surface. You see a lot of splashy mineralization, but perhaps you don't get the tonnage that you need to have an economically viable deposit, right? So when I brought this project, as mentioned, that unconformity, the presence of that big unconformity, which is just a really big fault in this case, to me, that was where I figured there was a chance at finding a large deposit. And also there was some till sampling that Teck did in 2003 on the project that had an open-ended anomaly with some good numbers. So the idea was, okay, the concept is a big fault here. We should be looking, within about a kilometer of that fault, not necessarily right on it. And there's these tills that we should follow up on. So, let's do some infill tills and see what happens. And so we did that, came up with an anomaly this time last year. We expanded that anomaly in 2021 to over 7 kilometers. And yeah, so we set out drill targeting, the one place where, in my mind anyway, there was the chance to have a big deposit. And that's key when you're looking for gold deposits. There's lots of whiffs and smoke, especially in this part of the world. But you got to get that size metric. That's super important.
Rory, what was some of the work that Sabina did on this project? Because from my understanding, they didn't drill off your guys' main target. So what work did they do?
Yeah, so they drilled around the Bathurst mine, called the Bathurst mine trend. They drilled around the KT vein up in the corner near the Bathurst mine, the Joe vein. They drilled where else? Around the Duncan 2. That's another old small pass producer. The Duncan 2 showing. So they were drilling these old prospects, and you certainly can't blame them. These are nice looking showings and small deposits. And yeah, I think they drilled about 15,000 meters, something like that over 5 years. And they did geophysics and geochem and all the rest. So there was a big, nice, comprehensive data set to work with. And perhaps they just didn't explore where we are because, there's no rock sticking out. The gold seems to be coming out of this swamp, as I'll mention or I'll show a little later. So that if there's no mineralized rock sticking out, there's not a lot of impetus to go down there and start drilling.
Fair. So Rory, big picture then, what type of a target are you looking for? Give us some sort of a ballpark of how big a target with this style of mineralization could be. What are the big picture goals?
Yeah, okay, we're looking for a Red Lake style deposit, which is typically high grade, narrow vein, but Red Lake is known for its high grade. And I'll show some examples of what they have there in Red Lake in a few slides, but also the size. So you do need that size. Red Lake, for example, the Red Lake gold mine, 27 million ounces past production and reserves at 21 grams per ton. So that's an amazing deposit. And to get that many ounces, you do need high grade, but you also need some size. And that's all in a footprint of about 2 kilometers by 300 meters, where you have these kind of anastomosing vein systems and dikes and anyways. So it's a big system. And again, I mean, really, that's why we started looking down here. We thought it had a chance to host a system that comparable in that size, and that's what we're going after.
Okay, thank you.
So, good time to segue into what you want to look for on the Red Lake side, because this is really important on our side, and this is really why we started exploring where we did. And these are things I learned in my time in Red Lake, looking at projects and all the rest. So in Red Lake, proximity to that unconformity is really important. Again, that unconformity is a big crustal scale fault structure that's shown in red there. Really, an unconformity is a flat erosional surface. You tip it on its side, all of a sudden it's a big fault that goes deep into the crust. So that's the significance there. And then you can see all the mines on that image there. They're all within 1,000 meters rather of that unconformity. So 95% of the gold that's come out of Red Lake, and they've probably mined 32 million ounces over the years, has come from within 1,000 meters of that red line. So proximity to an unconformity is key. Beyond that, the favorable trend, the favorable regional structural trend, this relates to the deformational history of the belt, in this case, the D2 deformational event. And these are the faults. If you can get faults in parallelism with that west-northwest trend, they're conducive to dilation and fluid flow and gold deposition and all the rest. So this is known as the mine trend in Red Lake. because it has the Campbell Red Lake mine and the Koshner mine and the Wilmar mine. There's I think there's 5 or 6 deposits that have been mined along that trend, and the trend itself is, I think, about 6 kilometers. But most significantly, it's that Red Lake Campbell deposit. Again, 27 million ounces, averaging 21 grams per ton. It was mined by 2 different operators, but really it's one big deposit, and it's a very nice one. And so that mine trend speaks to the importance of that west-northwest trend there. Another thing you want to see in all kind of orogenic gold systems is a composite contrast. And the idea here, you have 2 different rock types, and as the belt's getting squeezed, one rock type is bending and folding, and the other one is cracking open and hosting vein systems. You see this in the Red Lake high-grade zone in particular, where you have an ultramafic unit, ultramafic volcanics, which is kind of soft and almost like plasticine when it's way, 10 kilometers down in the crust. And that's up against these mafic volcanics, which are relatively more competent and they behave more brittly. As a result, your vein systems form in these basalts, as you can see, where the red is your high-grade ore. And it's just a great way of focusing fluid flow if you have these ultramafic rocks up against these mafic rocks. And the high-grade zone itself is kind of a sub-deposit within that overall Red Lake Campbell deposit. And it's around 6 million ounces at 81 grams per ton. I don't know if they mined all that out, but it's a spectacular volume of rock, really. It's a lot of gold in a small area, largely because of that ultramafic contact. So you want to be close to that. What you see in the high-grade zone is you see arsenopyrite and visible gold. Arsenopyrite is typically replacing the wall rock, over tens of centimeters type thing. And then there's associated biotite alteration, which kind of giving it that dark gray color, the really dark, almost black color there in the image. And then these deposits are enveloped with this anchorite alteration. Anchorite is an iron carbonate alteration, and it's really important. But again, you see that as the broader halo, and then when you're close to the veins or actually in mineralization, you see biotite. So those are things you want to look for. And the anchorite alteration itself really manifests, at least in geophysical data sets, as these magnetic lows. The carbonate alteration destroys magnetite, so that primary magnetite disappears, and what was originally a magnetic high becomes a low. And that's kind of a good idea to see where your alteration is. It gives you a good idea. So these are all things that are pretty much right the playbook in Red Lake. We just kind of wanted to take it to our side of the belt. And of course, the reason I bring these up is because these are things we do see in the Golden Corridor there. The proximity to the unconformity and that favorable trend is what brought us in to that part of the project. And now that we've started drilling, we're seeing a lot of things you see in the Red Lake site. Now, in the top image there, that's a few boxes of us drilling through the unconformity. Just we did poke a number of holes through there, and that looks a lot like what you see in Red Lake. So when I was in Red Lake, we had one project right next, immediately adjacent to the Red Lake gold mine. We were drilling 3,000 meter holes, just trying to get through that unconformity and get in those second order faults that parallel that unconformity. In that case, immediately under the unconformity, and it looks very similar to what we've seen. We see, tens of meters of semi-massive sulfide, locally massive sulfide. All the alteration you see on the Red Lake side, a lot of silica, sericite alteration, a ton of quartz. So it's just blasted out rock in a big fault. But really, that's not where your gold systems are. You want to be looking in the smaller second order faults that parallel the unconformity. And as mentioned, within about 500 to 1,000 meters. And then that's where the gold actually has time to precipitate out and get deposited. So another thing we're seeing, as mentioned, is these, and this was part of our concept. So we were happy to see this when we started drilling, is the ultramafics with these mafic volcanic interbeds. So that's shown in the second image there on the right. And the idea there is that's your composite contrast you're looking for. The ultramafics take up the strain, as you can see, and the basalts are more brittle, so they can break open and they can form vein systems. So we're really excited to see that, and that part of the story is holding up nicely. We're also seeing the anchorite alteration as a broad halo around where we're seeing some gold mineralization. And we're seeing arsenopyrite locally, and we're seeing native gold locally. We've seen native gold in 3 holes anyway to date in phase 1, and those are, different parts of different areas. And again, the magnetic lows are clearly showing up, and that's our anchorite alteration or our carbonate alteration. So everything's holding up. We kind of have all the earmarks of a Red Lake style deposit. We just need to find the high grade, and really that's what phase 2 is all about.
Rory, how deep have you been seeing some of this mineralization? Because you've mentioned anywhere from 500 meters to like 3,000 meters. So how deep have you guys been hitting this?
Yeah, I mean, we're drilling pretty shallow. We're drilling typically 300 to 350 meter holes, and they're at minus 45 degree dips, or at least in phase 1 they were, because we were kind of forced to. We couldn't get down on that swamp. That is really your ultramafic unit and your structural corridor. So we had to kind of sail these shallow dipping holes across. So we've tested down to maybe 200, 250 meters depth vertically. I think we did drill a 500 plus meter hole, 529 meters, and that was one of our earlier holes. And we were trying to see if we could sail across that whole ultramafic unit from the south, and because of the dip and all the structural information we know now, we couldn't do it. But typically 300 to 350 meter holes, shallow dipping holes.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll get into the details of the drilling and what we came up with in phase 1 there. Before, just if there's some people, some viewers, listeners who aren't familiar with the story, it really all started with this till anomaly that is, exists in what we're calling the Golden Corridor. It started as a 3.3 kilometer anomaly this time last year with some really exceptional samples, and we've since grown it to 7+ kilometers. And again, we're coming up with more exceptional samples this year, or we have, and by exceptional, I mean a lot of gold grains in a 10 kilogram bucket. And then importantly, a lot of the grains are large, and they're also, they have a certain morphology, which can tell you how far or how close you are to the source. And that's really important, and that's just really helpful. So for example, sample UC13, this is one of the highlight samples from 2020, the 2020 sampling, 882 gold grains, 110 grams per ton gold, which is really telling you they're large gold grains. And they were 100% pristine in nature. So what that tells you is you're probably within a few hundred meters as opposed to a kilometer or 10 kilometers away. Because the further these gold grains travel, the more rounded they become. They get those sharp little edges get abraded off or just kind of rounded out. So armed with that info, these till sampling, the geophysics, some of the mapping and all, we had everything. We were ready to start drilling. So in 2015, late May, we went out for phase 1 drilling. And the idea here was really, this is a reconnaissance drill program. We wanted to test a large area. We had 2 lineaments that parallel that unconformity that we wanted to test. And so we started with wide space drilling, anywhere from 100 to 300 meter space holes along, testing these lineaments. And what we came up with is 1,000 meter by 150 meter really footprint of a hydrothermal system where we're seeing the alteration. The geology looks great, and we're seeing some gold. Again, we just got to hone in on the high grade, but it is important to note that these are pretty wide space holes, especially for a Red Lake style high grade narrow vein type target.
Rory, real quick on those till samples, because I know that is really the first step here in the exploration aspect. How do some of those till samples relate to other gold discoveries, other projects in the area?
Yeah, so in 1991, I'll just step back a bit. In 1991, the Ontario Geological Survey did a till sample, a big program, regional program that covered the Red Lake belt as well as the Birch-Uchi belt. So we're on the Birch-Uchi side, which is on the east side, and then the Red Lake belt to the west. And they actually, the biggest anomaly they came up with was what they called the Skinner anomaly. So the Skinner is part of the project. I mean, that's what we have, and because it's in the Skinner Township, and they said this is the biggest, most impressive anomaly we have in the entire belt, including samples taken right next to the Red Lake gold mine. And so then people kind of got their eyes on. 1993, there was some follow-up follow-up sampling that again showed high gold grain counts, and really importantly, as you got towards where we're drilling now, the degree of pristine, the pristine nature of the grains kind of increases, or the percentage of pristine grains in each sample. So that's you kind of chase it up ice, right? And you're trying to find that source. As far as regionally, these are some of the, we've done our research to the extent we could anyway in Canada. Looking at other kind of till stories, till discoveries. There have been a number of them. And really these numbers are kind of, if not the highest we've seen, they're right up there, especially the 100% pristine gold grain counts. That's just something you don't see very often. Typically you see these big trains and they're, you got to chase them up kilometers or several kilometers to the source. But this is telling us we're within a few hundred meters. So yeah, no, they're pretty exceptional samples, and certainly the size of the anomaly itself is exceptional as well.
Okay.
So that footprint I mentioned, I've kind of hashed it out there, and this correlates perfectly with an area of like a mag low, an area of magnetite destruction, and that is obviously where we're seeing our alteration. So the magnetics are telling us they're very useful in guiding exploration. Where you see this magnetite destruction, it's typically a result of alteration, because that ultramafic unit that underlies that swamp you see there, I've kind of drawn in the trace of that ultramafic unit in the purple dashed line. It's a strongly magnetic body until you subject it to a whole bunch of carbonate alteration. So we're seeing the alteration within that footprint. It's about a kilometer, well, almost exactly 1,000 meters in the east-west by 150 meters north-south. And it is immediately up ice of the higher tills, as you can see there with the ice direction. So it's making sense with that regard, in that regard. And we also did some soil sampling this year, very tight soil grid, 25 meters spaced. So we got a lot of soils. And again, they're showing that that structural corridor, which in turn is that ultramafic body, seems to be where all these anomalous soils are leaking off. It's pretty clear that they're immediately down ice of that purple dashed line, which is your strained up ultramafic body with these receptive mafic interbeds. And some of the soils we're getting are up to over 4 grams. Every pink circle you see there is over. I should have fixed my legend. They're actually over 200 ppb there. So these are pretty anomalous soils, and again, they're all kind of pointing towards that structural corridor there.
So I guess it's fair to say, after this phase 1 drill program, this is your priority target then. What you guys hit, your focus is on this 1,000 meter by 15 or 150 meter footprint.
Yes, there are these other magnetic low anomalies further downtrend, or to the east and to the southeast. So, and again, we've started drilling those, and they're showing the same kind of alteration. So it's looking like there is there's anchorite alteration associated with those magnetic lows as well. So those are kind of whole other targets that we'll be testing in phase 2. But the main focus, yes, I would say, is that 1,000 meter by 150 meter anomaly there, just because we're seeing consistent mineralization. It's low grade, and here and there, a little bit of moderate grade here and there, but it's certainly a very valid target that's holding up nicely. It's got the size potential, which I mentioned is important. And we're consistently seeing the alteration we want to see. So it deserves tighter drilling. It looks like we've drilled a lot of holes into that, but I'll try and convince you or show you why that's not necessarily the case. We really haven't given that thing a fair shake yet. Phase 2, we'll get down to business, and we should have some more success, because that's kind of how it goes. Once you start infill drilling, things typically get better. So some of the drilling we got from that phase 1 reconnaissance drilling, some of the rock anyway, is very reminiscent of the kind of stuff you see in Red Lake. We're seeing these biotite altered volcanics where we see arsenopyrite plus or minus native gold. We're seeing the anchorite alteration surrounding that whole kind of halo, and we're seeing some gold. Keep in mind, this is a brand new target. The nearest historical drill hole is 1.5 kilometers away. So, and it is under a swamp, so it's hard, right? You can't see anything. There's nothing sticking out at surface to target this, but we're seeing gold. We just have to keep hunting for that high grade. Typically, we see gold within these basalt interbeds, as shown in that upper photograph there. So you can see it's more competent bed has seen a bunch of alteration, it's seen some veining, and there's some gold within that. It's not what we're looking for yet, 2 grams over 3 meters, but it's significant. And we're also seeing gold, here and there in the ultramafics. Down here, 5 grams over, what is it? I can't see because my picture is in front of it, but I think
5 grams over half a meter
or something like that, and then 5.6 over half a meter. So we are seeing gold in a bunch of different, the 2 different rock types, but typically it's in those mafic interbeds, and that's what we want to target moving forward, because those are what's receptive. So you need to target the basalts, those interbeds, as well as the veins themselves. Where the 2 coincide, you're in business. Another thing we learned recently, so we've recently completed a drone magnetic survey over the whole corridor there, and that was completed by EarthX Geophysical Solutions, and those guys deliver a very nice product. And it's a high resolution survey, about 25 meter line spacing, because the magnetics really has been the most useful geophysical data set so far. We did IP and stuff in May and April. It wasn't, it's not as useful anyway, and that's not uncommon with these kind of systems. So what we learned through the drone mag, and more recently with this optical televiewer surveying we did, where you send a camera down the hole and it gives you all your structural orientations of your veins, your bedding, foliation, is that there seems to be this east-northeast trending cross structure that you can trace for several kilometers, and it turns into these long, elongate, narrow lakes further to the southwest. And this is perhaps playing a role in localizing the fluids where we're seeing them along this broader east-west trend or corridor. And you do see a lot of mineralization, in this kind of structure. Arsenopyrite, you're seeing localized visible gold. We've seen, one little spot anyway. And so we did spend some time kind of drilling that. It looked really good. And it's not to say that there's not more gold there, but that kind of, took up a bit of meters there because it looked amazing. So far, we do have one interval at 8 grams over just or 7.8 grams over 0.8 meters. But again, the main target there is that bigger east-west trending thing. But this still gives us some structural information that we can kind of bring to bear for phase 2, which should be helpful. So while I'm on this magnetic survey, because this is brand new data, I'm just going to try and share my screen here. And I just want to show the viewers a couple things that we can glean from this recently received data. So assuming you can see my screen there, Cory?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so that's the survey there, 600 plus line kilometers, covering about 8 kilometers of that trend. And then these guys have given us some 3D inversions, which are very useful, especially when you want to kind of see what happens in the vertical dimension there. So what you're looking at now is the 3D inversions that go to depth. And if you can see my cursor, this kind of black spot here along that trend is the that area of mag destruction. That's that 1 kilometer by 150 meter kind of footprint. And then here the ultramafic keeps going, and it's very strongly magnetic here. So we know through drilling that it keeps going all the way down and around that ultramafic body that is normally magnetic, except where you're seeing your alteration. So that's a good that's easy to chase. And then there are also a few of these mag lows, as mentioned, heading downtrend to the east. So just to show you in the other dimension what this mag low looks like, if I just slice that. So now when I flip this, we're going to be looking to the north from the side, and it'll hopefully give you an idea of what we're looking in the XY dimension. So this big black space, or where that ultramafic doesn't keel down, this is our target, and this is what the inversion shows to depth. Another thing I kind of want to be or perhaps leave as a takeaway here is, these are vertically extensive deposits. Red Lake, when I left there 10 years ago, I think they were mining at just about 2 kilometers down. I think they're at the 52 level, which is, or at least they were exploring down there, getting ready to move down to the 52 level, which is about 7,000 feet down. So just over 2 kilometers. So these are huge targets when you take into account the third dimension. And as mentioned, we've only kind of just scratched the surface, poking holes, getting as deep as 200 to maxing out at about 250 meters depth. So this is a whole lot of exploration potential, in that dimension as well. And one last thing I'll just show, which is kind of neat, I guess, is if I just move this around, you can really see the bends. You see that kind of, it's like a sinusoidal curve there. So these bends, when you have big fault structures, they can be really important, and this just gives you a good opportunity for kind of big scale dilation and associated fluid flow and all the rest. So when you have these really big crustal scale faults and they're bending like this, that's a great sign, because a straight fault with no jogs or bends typically doesn't have too much going on.
Okay.
So that's just a little bit of info there. I'm going to head back to the...
So Rory, I guess big picture, as you pull up the presentation again, what's
Yep.
the big change that's happened here from the phase 1 program into this phase 2 program? It sounds like you have a lot more data. You've done a lot more of the surface work. What is the big picture change that's coming here in development?
Good timing, Cory. Your timing is exceptional. Okay, I'm just getting into why this is important. So I'll show you in the next slide. So first off, we're funded to do the next 10,000 meters. We're going to see that through. That should be finished in, let's just say, late January, something like that. And there's two components to phase 2. Let's just call this phase 2A, the next 10,000 meters. We're going to test these additional mag low targets to the east, because they're seemingly associated with alteration based on what we know so far. But really the main focus, at least what gets me very excited, is tighter drilling on that big 1 kilometer kind of footprint. And the reason we haven't done this to date is because it's a swamp. You can't get down there in the summer months. And now that it's cold, it's about minus 15 degrees at camp today. You can get down onto that swamp now that it's firmed up, and we can drill it more efficiently, because we've been having to kind of sail these holes across. And not only are you wasting, not necessarily wasting, but there's, you're not maximizing your drill efficiency. There's also a dip to these, to the units and to the veins and to the faults and the foliation. This is all dipping to the north. So when you're drilling from the south, you're kind of handicapped there a bit, as far as it's just, you're not getting through the veins, you're not getting through the stratigraphy. And as I mentioned, you need both. So to show this, I've drawn a cross section here. That's real data from some drill holes. That little plan map shows you where I picked this from. So I just kind of cleaned it up. I took off. So just 2 holes showing the difference between drilling from the north side and drilling from the south side. So those are both minus 45 degree holes, and that's as shallow as you can drill with modern drills anyway, unless you're underground. So these minus 45 degree holes. So you can see when you're drilling from the north, you're cutting through the stratigraphy, these basalt interbeds where typically we see our gold. And we also see a fair amount of gold on either side of this footwall fault there. That's another reason that seems to be focusing. So it's really kind of if you're to prioritize the search space, it's the southern half of that whole body. And within that, you're looking for these mafic interbeds. So when you're drilling from the south, you're just not getting through them. You're not getting through the veins. You're not getting through the stratigraphy. But the reason we didn't spend, we did move to the north and try drilling from the north, but then we kind of realized, well, we were wasting some meters drilling from the north side, drilling through non-prospective geology, essentially. So this is the same section here. What I've shown on is some of this recent televiewer data. So the televiewer gives you a whole bunch of structural measurements that you can use to target with. So those yellow lines are veins. And those are the true orientation of the veins. So you can see, and there's a lot of them. I think there's 100 there. They actually gave me over 1,000 for that one hole. And obviously we're waiting for the rest of the data. I only have that one hole so far because we just finished this. But so I distilled 1,000 veins down to 100 just by picking every 10th one randomly. And you can see the orientations there line up with the stratigraphy and the faults and the foliations for the most part. In some cases, they're actually even dipping shallower than minus 45. In which case you're drilling under these things. You're not hitting these veins at all. So for the first time, we can get down on that swamp. And I tried to turn on my whiteboard, but it's not working. Doesn't matter.
Hold on. I might be able to help you out there. There you go.
Oh, there you go. Nice one. Okay. So let's just so I can show you how you can kind of drill the things now. So what we couldn't do before, so let's just say we're drilling here and we're drilling a minus 45 degree hole through there. So you can hit the beds, you can hit the veins. For the first time we've hit something. We can drill up dip, we can steepen and drill down, or we can step back and drill like this. So this is going to be the first time we can really properly test this corridor, the stratigraphy and the veins, which is super important. And again, we could do that from the north to some degree, but we were just wasting meters. And this is one example where you could get pretty close to the swamp. In lots of cases, we had to set back, 100 meters, and then all of a sudden you're wasting, 200 meters, and it just wasn't efficient drilling. So we waited till winter, get down on that swamp where we can really pound away. We can target up dip, target down dip, and this is how you make a discovery. I mean, these targets are drill intensive. The more holes you drill, the better chance you're finding the high grade. And we can also start to model up the stratigraphy more effectively, as well as the veins, because you do need both. Where those two coincide gives you your best chance at finding thicker intersections of a potentially higher grade.
Okay, this all ties into a question that came in just a little bit ago, talking about the drill spacings. You said about 80 meters, I believe, are going to be the spacings initially in this program. Is that going to be tight enough to get a good understanding of this potential asset?
No, it's not. We're starting with 80 meters, and the idea there is you can move down to 40 by infill drilling. But again, this is still kind of early days on this whole target. So we're starting with 80 with the idea you can go in between those holes and drill 40-foot or 40-meter centers. And in some cases, even 40-meter centers is too broad. But obviously, you got to find the ore shoots first. You got to start to model this up. You got to get a handle on where the higher grade portions of this area are. So good question. The answer is I would say no, but this is all set up so that we can infill at 40. But we're still kind of poking around here.
Fair enough. Still early on, right?
That's right. That's what we want people to. So any other questions there, Cory, on this before I move on there?
No, we're all good there. Thank you.
So that about wraps it up. Just to summarize, we're looking for a red lake target. So these are high grade, narrow vein targets. They're hard to find. They're hard to hit with a drill, but once you're onto them, they grow quickly. The high grade nature of them, you can really start to build ounces, and these are valuable deposits. And that's what we're looking for. You can sell these things. 3.8 million in the treasury, so we can comfortably fund the next 10,000 meters because we're drilling at about 200 meters all in. So let's just say it costs 1.8 to $2 million for that 10,000 meters. And the team, at least Pete and Dirk, and Tom and Doug Cater, and these guys have done this before. They've found deposits, and more importantly, they've sold deposits, and that's not easy. Not everyone can say they've done that. Our market cap did get cut down pretty bad when we put out that news. Perhaps I didn't do a good job conveying to the market that it's early days and we're onto something and it's significant, but really it's going to take tighter drilling, and that phase two is that's the objective with phase two there. Like I said, this is a Red Lake style deposit. So if you can find one of these, which it looks like we have all the earmarks of a Red Lake deposit, they're worth a lot of money.
Okay. Rory, there's a couple more just kind of general questions. That last slide actually answered a couple of questions for a couple of people that tuned in a bit late in terms of the cash in the bank. But a couple other questions regarding the actual project and property status. Are there more claims in and around the asset or just the general project that you guys need to acquire, that you're looking at acquiring, that would help to grow this project?
Well, we kind of, 160 square kilometers is a big chunk of land. So what we did when we put that together was we tried to encompass all the prospective geologies. So if you think back to that map I showed where, the shape of that land position, immediately to the west is what's called the Trout Lake Batholith. It's a big granodiorite body, really not prospective for this kind of, greenstone, Archean, low gold mineralization. So there was no real need for us to get anything further to the west because it's the geology is not prospective. To the north, similar kind of thing. You get into a different belt of rocks. sediments and stuff, not your typical ultramafic sequences. So again, to the north, we were, we weren't really inclined to get more ground there. And some of that was staked, and there's some stuff up there. There's no doubt, but it's all gone now anyway. To the east, you're moving into a different age of rocks, right? You go from the Balmer to the Narrow Lake assemblage, which is what we have, and then you go into Confederation, and Confederation. Anyways, it's still it's kind of it's contested anyways, but not as prospective, I would say. A little young, not as prospective for the kind of gold, the high grade gold mineralization we're looking for. And then to the south, really we kind of where that fault starts to go north south. There are some showings down there, and we have some of those showings on our project. But again, you kind of lose that favorable west northwest trend, which is it's all about the D2 deformational event in Red Lake. So you want to be close to that east-west or west-northwest or even northwest trend with your big faults. And as you go all the way to the south, they're kind of north-south trending. So we weren't super keen on picking up ground down there.
Okay. Real quick, we kind of covered it in that last question, but to the north, there is Great Bear Resources. They hold a parcel of land up there. Do you know what they're doing work-wise?
I don't know exactly. I know that they're right. There's something called the Swain Lake Deformation Zone, which comes on the northern portion of our property. And it's a big structural corridor that has that west-northwest trend. So my guess is because their LP fault has similar kind of characteristics as far as orientation and the fact that you see sediments and some marker horizons up against the volcanic package, that they were targeting just something kind of analogous structurally to what they're looking at the Dixie project at the LP there. But again, I'm just kind of speculating, and I imagine they're doing some early stage stuff, working up targets. Yeah, there's not a ton of data up there, so I can't really say with any kind of certainty, this is what they're going after or this, that, or the other.
Okay, final question, then I'll get you out of here. Let's talk about some of that share price action, because as you even outlined, the market cap of the company now is down to around 15 million. The stock was around $1.50, dropped down to mid 60-cent range. Is that selling done? Can you give us any more insights on if there was a major seller in there, and now at this lower market cap, in your eyes, just summarize the overall opportunity? Yeah,
I think it is an opportunity, and I can tell you internally, myself, I bought some shares because at around 75 cents, because it is a good price. Yeah, when we put out that news, we got hit much harder than anticipated. Obviously, the market, or I'm assuming the market, was expecting a discovery hole. Fair enough. There was certainly a lot of high expectations, but the reality is, that share price is very low right now. I mean, the cheapest paper we have in the company right now post consolidation is 55 cents. Most of the paper was picked up or on the retail side was probably purchased somewhere between $1 and just over $2. We were north of $2 for a while there, but really we kind of hung in at $1.50 for probably 12 months. And to get cut in half like that was a shocker. The institutions, I can't really say with 100% certainty, but for the most part, our institutional guys are holding. At least that's what we've been told. And because they understand, right? They appreciate the fact that it takes time to find these deposits. I know they're encouraged with what we've seen, like in that, we found a system. We're finding gold in a brand new area. All the structure, the geology is there, alteration, mineralization style. It's just really a function of drill density and more drilling, and importantly, getting down on that swamp and drilling it off properly now that we can. And otherwise, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it was largely retail. And then, when you get that downward momentum, it kind of tumbled on us. And yeah, we didn't expect that. I mean, this was good news as far as we were concerned. We found something. Now we got to get down to business and find the high grade. But that's how it goes. And like you say, yeah, we're at a pretty attractive price, I think, right now.
Yeah, it just timed with kind of the market selling off as well. So another thing to consider there. But hey, Pete, really appreciate the update and the overview of the company and now this phase 2 drill program. If anybody has any follow-up questions, Pete's email is right there, pete@prospergoldcorp.com. You can also email me directly. That is Fleck at kereport.com. And I will be having Peter back on my show to highlight some of the future news coming out of the company. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Pete, thanks for taking the time to update us on the story, and we'll be in touch as more news hits the market.
Thanks, Cory. Appreciate it.